Judith Reisman, always a pleasure to have her on the show. She's an expert on human sexuality and an internationally respected academic. What lunacy is now being committed in the name of social progress? We'll find out. She's in Washington, D.C. Welcome to you, my friend.
Thank you. So glad to be talking with you again, Michael. Wish I didn't have to continue saying these things.
Oh, I know. Well, I know you've just come back from the Philippines, and we assume that there are outposts of sanity left. But apparently this crazy sex education nonsense is now being thrown at kids in the Philippines, too.
Well, it's not only being thrown, but it's totally the RH bill, which is the poorly labeled or incorrectly labeled reproductive health bill, is being forced down the throat of the Philippine people who are objecting strenuously. This is the last outpost, the Philippines, of the Catholic Church in Asia, and they are being threatened in this bill with malicious disinformation, being jailed. That is, anyone who doesn't agree with the contraceptive efforts being forced upon them, anyone who doesn't agree that the hospitals and the doctors and the employers have to pay for abortions and a whole broad spectrum of other anti-Catholic beliefs and so forth, they can be accused of malicious disinformation and jailed. And that includes priests, and that includes doctors, anyone who wants to tell the truth about some of these promiscuous promotions can be jailed with this new bill.
This is incredible. I wasn't aware of this, and we should emphasize, you're not saying this as a Catholic. You're not Catholic. But people...
No, I'm not Catholic. No, but this is draconian. This is like a fascist country would do things, or a communist country would jail priests and doctors who say that they're going to release what they believe is the truth about the penalties of using contraception for teenagers, that sort of thing. It's called malicious disinformation. And I'll tell you something, Michael, I've never known how to describe human sexuality education before, but I would say that they're correct. The human sexuality education being delivered to children in this country and worldwide really is malicious disinformation, but they don't get jailed for it.
No. Well, it's very pertinent.
They get paid.
It's very pertinent to what's happening in Canada, in Ontario, and also I know I was in Alberta recently, the same is happening there, and British Columbia. Sex education curricula, which are no one is asking for them, but they're being imposed, and they're extremely radical. They're saying there are numerous different genders, that kids have to be sexualized at a very early age. What's the origin of all this garbage?
Well, the origin, of course, is Dr. Alfred Kinsey, 1948, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, Sexual Behavior in the Human Female, 1953. And the origin, the outrageous origin, then, is the sexual abuse, the sexual rapes, excuse me, of up to 2,035 infants and children. The youngest identified by Kinsey himself was 2 months of age. Instead of prosecuting, going after Kinsey, instead of the congressional investigation that is required, what has happened is his fraudulent, criminally derived research has spewed out worldwide and is being used as the basis for indoctrinating children from the earliest ages. By the way, unbelievable stuff happening also in London. It's everywhere.
Really. And yet they made a movie about this man with Liam Neeson, who recently said he's considering converting to Islam. It might be a good idea. I think he was being flippant. But they make a movie about the man, portraying him as this great pioneer, this persecuted hero. He was raping children.
Yeah. Exactly. And my question to Congress, my question to the Canadian Congress, to the Supreme Court, to the courts of the world is, why then are we not investigating proven, factually proven rapes of these children by the premier father of the whole field of human sexuality education? He formed it. There was no field before him at all. And our rates of dysfunction are every category, from sexually transmitted diseases, Michael, to abortions, to sex crimes. You name everything that has to do with sex. They were healthier in 1950, down at the bottom of the barrel, and off the charts today. And we've got to investigate this, Kinsey. We've got to do this on either in Canada, certainly would be wonderful in the United States, so that the world's population can learn the truth about the origin of these false data that are being used to train our children, brainwash them before their brains are even physically mature enough, cognitively mature enough to be able to deal with sexuality issues. And that part of it is settled science now.
You know, it really is wonderful we have you saying this, because if you were, say, a Christian minister, if you were known to be particularly conservative, people would just say, oh, you're an ideologue, you don't know what you're talking about. You obviously are incredibly qualified, you have no particular agenda here. You're just speaking truth for the majority of people who feel silenced now.
Oh, absolutely. I was brought kicking and screaming, you know, into this whole business. I don't know if I ever told you, but you know, I used to be a songwriter and a singer. I worked for Captain Kangaroo, for public television, NBC, CBS, PBS, all this sort of thing, until I began to look around and start asking questions as to how come so many children were being sexually abused.
Yeah.
And sexual abuse today is pandemic. People have gotten to the point where they think it's always been normal. Michael, it has not been normal.
Judith, we're going to have you back on the show time and time again if needs be, as long as you'll come, because this needs to be exposed. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Still to come, cornucopia and a dose of wit and wisdom to start the week in a particularly tasty way. The fight for the Republican nomination and the war on Rip Santorum and the war on truth. Coming up, you've got millions, beauty, talent, and you become a junkie. And we all weep and pretend to care.